Hello, welcome to another episode of Show Boys. My name is Mike, and I'm joined by my good friend and the most aggressively mediocre producer around, Dad. How you doing, bro?
I am doing well.
Yeah.
Hoping we don't lose power tonight.
Yes. So yeah, we got a pretty rad storm rolling through right now. So hopefully we don't lose power. So keep your fingers crossed. Uh, Chad and Nick aren't here. They're, I don't know, out of town on vacation, doing something fun. So, it's just a Dad and Mike show tonight. It's the first time we've ever had a little duo cast together.
Yeah, that's right. First time.
Yeah. We had a really cool guest lined up for tonight. Anthony, one of the producers from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Nice local YouTube sports show. Love them. Watch them every day, every weekday. I think it's 11 to 1. Little plug there. But he is also going through the same rad storm we are. And up in his neck of the woods, they have lost power. So he may or may not be popping on tonight. If he doesn't make it tonight, we're going to line something up for a future episode. But we do have a fun episode tonight, a topic that I've kind of indirectly touched on a handful of times, I think this summer, actually.
Yeah.
But Dad, you brought it up when we were brainstorming something to talk about. And yeah, I'm really excited to get into it. But before we get into anything, we got to shout out our top tier patrons, Joe C, Yusuf H, and Tim B. Thank you guys so much for always being there and supporting us via Patreon. If you have no idea what Patreon is, or if you're interested in checking it out and potentially supporting us, you can head over to patreon.com/showboyspodcast. Check it out. We have 4 different price points that you can sign up for and support us monthly. One of the perks at one of the price points includes a monthly Patreon exclusive episode of the podcast. I think at another price point, you can see all the other random stuff, content that we've created that doesn't really fit into one of our normal categories. So we're putting it on Patreon for people to chill or to go through and enjoy. And I think at our top tier one, you can join the illustrious list of top tier patrons that we shout out every week. But I think for every, I forget what the time frame is, but you get a free piece of merch every so many months. So go check it out. I just got the email today that this batch of free stuff for our top tier patrons got shipped. So if you're listening, guys, should be coming soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that out of the way, Cricket, he says, I see Hollow Knight in the background. That game is too good.
It is. It is too good. Too good that I suck at it.
Jeff, Dad wishes he could be too good at the game.
That's right.
That's one of those games that's been on my wish list for probably a year. And it goes on sale semi-frequently, and I still never buy it. But it's always one of those ones where I'm like, I need to buy it, and then I just forget.
You'll be glad you did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so one last thing, we're getting closer to 500 subscribers here on YouTube. Help us out. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Got some fun stuff coming your way.
Oh yeah.
Which I guess we could talk about. I've been doing a little side project called Poke Boys with my good friend Jared from Play Along Podcast. We just finished our first season of Poke Boys, where we're going through and doing different challenge runs through games, playing different fan games and ROM hacks, and any other sort of fun and crazy Pokemon related content. Our first season just wrapped. It all released over on playalongpod.com, so head over there and check it out. I bring it up because season 2 we started recording a couple weeks ago, and that will be landing here on our YouTube channel and our podcast feed. So make sure you check out season 1 over at playalongpod.com and then hang around for season 2, where Dad was slaving away editing a video for me last night for a fun little interstitial episode between seasons. We sat down, interviewed a really cool Pokemon YouTuber called Infamous Trainer. He was awesome, and I'm excited for you guys to see that interview here soon. So subscribe so you know when all these things go live on our YouTube channel.
I want to say real quick,
yeah,
the little bit of editing that I did for season 2 of Pokeboys, very fun. Jared is awesome. Shout out Jared.
Awesome. He's super cool.
You guys got to go check him out. He's great. All the content he does is just superb.
Agreed. That's the second time that word has come up today, superb, and I have a story to tell about it after I say this. But I couldn't agree more. Jared's awesome. Play Along Pod is super cool. They're like a book club for video games. So actually, if you're a Patreon, or if you're a patron, you may have noticed that we released our exclusive Patreon episode schedule through the end of the year, and I basically ripped off Jared's podcast for our Patreon series. We're going through and we're playing through Tomb Raider. We're covering, I think, 4 chapters an episode, which is exactly what they do, and they do it with excellence. They pick a game. They play through a handful of chapters, sit down, talk about their experience, talk about the narrative, break down everything about the game, and it's awesome. Go check them out, playalongpod.com. I mean, Jared's been on Showboys at least 2 episodes, not surprisingly, Pokemon-themed episodes.
Pokemon, shocking.
Yeah, so check him out. Jared's awesome. Play Along Pod's awesome. Dad's awesome. And, we've been friends for a long time,
like going on 20 years, I think.
Yeah, and this is the first time that the 2 of us have been on the podcast alone.
Watch out.
That's weird.
Things could get rowdy.
That's right.
I'm hoping they do.
I'm excited.
Not weather-wise.
I mean, I don't know if you guys saw, but the lights did just flicker here in the basement. So
did it flicker there? It flickered here.
Oh yeah,
that was crazy.
So yeah, we'll see what happens.
We're going with it.
I'm not gonna lie, even though I was telling everyone useful information here, I was just trying to buy some time, maybe hoping Anthony's power would come back on. But I'm not gonna hold my breath because the storm is pretty rad. So let's get on to the topic tonight. We're gonna be talking about AAA games versus indie games.
Yeah.
Like what defines both. I have the questions here. So what makes a AAA game versus an indie game? We're going to tackle if AAA games are being influenced and backed by investors with their own agendas. We're going to get real deep in the weeds. Does money devalue the message of the game in the heart of its creators? And do game studios have to have huge monetary backing to be significant? We'll also touch on some of our favorite AAA games, some of our favorite indie games. But yeah, we got some comments here. Joe Cross says, "Look at those handsome boys." Aww. Thanks, bro. Chloe G, hey, what's up, Chloe? Storming here too. Yeah, it's been a rough storm. Yeah, everyone's commenting on the weather. So, see, guys, we're not lying. It's crazy out there.
We're safe in our basements.
We are.
Just, if you're wondering, if you're concerned, we're okay.
Yeah, none of my family is. They're all on the top floor, so they're screwed. But I am safe down here.
What matters is that you are safe.
Exactly. We wouldn't have the show if I wasn't safe. No, I'm just kidding. You guys don't need me.
We like to take risks. Weather boys. Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
Other weather boys. Little side piece.
Joe's always over there with the great ideas. Yeah, so I guess first things first. What defines a AAA game? This is kind of what I found. I'll back up a sec. When I approached Anthony with this topic, he was really excited to talk about it because he had just watched a video by a YouTube creator named Bricky talking about this very subject. What even is a AAA game anymore? I watched the video. It's probably like 20 minutes, something like that. It was really, really good. And he kind of defined a AAA game pretty well, I think. And basically, it's like a combination of a high budget made by a large studio or dev team that has some like credibility and renown behind it, that boasts top tier quality, and usually comes with like some sort of massive marketing campaign behind the game. Does that resonate with you, Jeff, or how would you define a AAA game?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty spot on, actually. Large production, huge team, a lot of developers, typically catering to the mainstream audience, the player base. Yeah, I mean, they typically generate higher sales. So like there's a lot of money involved, a lot of money backing, a lot of money gained. It's yeah, the big boys, the big dogs.
Yeah. And then indie games on the flip side. How would you define those, Jeff?
Much smaller in scale as far as development teams. Very laser focused on their what they want to accomplish. Not really driven by money or outside influencers. I would say the indie developers are more innovative. They like to take more risks. They're not afraid to do something different.
Yeah. So I was looking up here because something that'll probably come up later in the episode I found out today while I was putting together notes. I was like, I just Googled real quick what defines an indie game studio, and yeah, you're pretty much right on. Smaller development teams without the financial and technical support of a large game publisher. In contrast to most AAA games, because of their independence and freedom to develop, indie games often focus on innovation, experimental gameplay, and taking risks not usually afforded in AAA games. So yeah,
and I feel like there's a lot less pressure to like pump out games too.
Yeah, because you're not being financed by somebody.
Right.
You're usually, financed by yourself, or like maybe crowdfunded of some sort.
Yes.
But yeah, you kind of create. I think in recent times, what has pushed me more towards indie games is that factor right there. It seems like these indie games are being made with passion instead of like obligation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
These creators are like making games that they think would be fun to play.
Yeah.
That they want to make, right? Instead of like just throwing this out here, not like throwing shade on anything. But Jedi Fallen Order, they put out a Star Wars game and it was a success and people latched onto it and loved it. And now is EA pressuring their studios to continue to make Jedi games because the first one was a hit. Yeah. Or, you have an indie game that I can't well, Hollow Knight's not a good one because they're coming out with a sequel to that, right?
Yeah.
Shoot. Valheim.
There you go.
Massive hit indie game. They're still Valheim is crazy because it's still technically in early access, I think. So maybe that's not the best example, but it kind of is a great example because it sold an absolutely absurd amount of copies in early access, and that game at the start was made by 2 people, right? A very small 5 people,
Yeah.
very, very small team. Are they now feeling pressured to hurry up and quickly develop a sequel? No, they're still fleshing out the roadmap and the plans that they had for this game that they created because they thought it would be a fun game to play, right?
And it is.
And it really is. So that's kind of pushed me towards indie games lately. And if you've listened to some of our recent episodes, mainly the ones where we covered like the week or two long of gaming showcases, a couple like last month, I think it was. Every game I talked about that I was excited about was an indie game.
Yeah.
Everyone was, getting real hyped for Spider-Man 2 and like the Final Fantasy remake and the bigger announcements that were made. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, whatever. Then I see a dumb game like Beastie Ball, which is Pokemon, but they play volleyball instead of battle each other. And I'm like, this game looks so cool. Look at this. And I just like every game I got excited about was an indie game.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm shaking my desk.
He's so excited.
Yeah.
I've noticed recently I've been getting more and more excited about indie games. And I do enjoy a handful of AAA games. But like you were talking about earlier, studios that get pressured into just releasing a game. A good example I was thinking about was Dead Space. The first 2 were phenomenal games. The third one, it just didn't feel like Dead Space anymore because they were so pushed to release something.
You could tell EA got its grimy little paws.
Right. And that's a sad thing to see. Like, you really hate to see it because like you've got this great startup franchise, like with a lot of promise, and it played so well and it looked amazing and it was just a great concept. And then it just got pulled away from that. Yeah, it just sucks.
Yeah, you said that, and then I immediately thought, man, I really need to add that sound clip to every brand we have here in streaming.
I hate to see it.
But yeah, it's so true. Like the Dead Space 1 and 2 are phenomenal games. And 3 wasn't like, by any stretch of the imagination, wasn't like an absolutely terrible game. The quality was significantly less than 1 and 2, and it just felt like a completely different genre, I guess.
Yeah.
Like the gameplay loop fundamentally changed, which you see, that happened a little bit with Resident Evil there towards like 5 and 6, definitely 6, maybe not 5, but 5 gets some flack. Sometimes a series needs to do that to spice things up.
Sure.
But with Dead Space, it just felt different because you could feel the influence by EA, which was rough. With all that being said, though, I love me a great AAA game. Like The Last of Us, probably one of my favorite games of all time. The Uncharted series, one of my favorite series of all time. I recently played, well, not recently, within the last year or so, Horizon Zero Dawn. Amazing game. But it seems like, well, it doesn't seem like, it's very apparent because you see it happening over and over and over again with new games. You see it with like Fallout 76, Cyberpunk 2077, Jedi Survivor on PC. The quality of these $70 games that are coming out just absolutely horrid, released in unplayable states, released unfinished. And it's just, I understand why, because of, deadlines.
Right.
Gotta meet certain profit margins per your investment in the game. You got to get these games out into players' hands. We'll get it out and then we'll fix it later. Just whatever. Let's just get it out. Make our money. It's crazy how a game like, I'll just use Valheim again because it's the one that I've definitely sunk the most hours into. I'm like 300 plus hours into Valheim, and it was all like the summer that it released. But that game released in early access. Granted, its graphic fidelity, not great, but that's by design. It's not a graphically intensive game. Little to no bugs. Made by 5 people.
Yeah.
Cost $20. Like a polished game that's fun to play, that actually works, and costs a third of the price. Seems way more appealing, at least in this stage of my life, than spending $60 to $70 on an incredibly buggy, borderline unplayable game that may or may not get fixed within the first week or two of the game's release.
Cyberpunk.
I don't know. It's wild.
It is. I was thinking of a game. And then you have Call of Duty, who pumps out a game every year.
Yeah.
For the last 20 years. I mean, I feel like, I don't know of many bugs that they've had. I mean, they're basically just copy and pasting everything.
Yeah.
Maybe upgrades here and there, but like, it's just like the cookie cutter shooter, like they can not reinvent themselves, but just regurgitate all the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've just, in my research in this topic, like, it's just crazy. You've got these massive companies with tons of people, and they can't create a solid game without bugs. Like, I've dabbled a little bit in making a game, and like, there's so much frustration in it. Like, there's a bug, and I'm like, yeah, in year 5.
Joe Cross says Division 2 still crashes on me constantly, and it's in year 5. Yes, I do see that. I do see every time you go to stream this, you're like, "Hey, I'm playing Crash Simulator 2 tonight."
That's awesome.
Oh, you know what that calls for?
You hate to see it. You hate to see it.
You really hate to see it, guys.
You hate to see it. I know you hate to see it.
You hate to see it.
I wonder if anybody heard that.
I hope so, because probably my favorite sound clip I may have stumbled upon in my time on YouTube.
Yes, that's a good find.
So I came up with a small list of AAA games that I think crush, and by crush I mean this is good, like great AAA games that I think just really deliver on the AAA experience, and a list of indie games that I think are absolutely great and deliver on the indie experience. And I would be interested to hear if you have any, maybe. So,
okay.
For AAA games, again, I haven't played too many in recent times, but the ones that stick out that I have played, Last of Us played on release when it came out, so that's several years ago, still cemented in my brain as like top 3, if not my favorite game ever. Absolutely delivers on every checklist item of a AAA experience. Recently, within the last year, Horizon Zero Dawn delivered on the same thing. And that was even with me playing that game on stream and not fully like exploring every nook and cranny of that game. Like I was playing it on stream, trying to beat it. I wasn't rushing through it, but I definitely did not like really take my time through that game. And it still delivered on that AAA experience. A couple games that I have not played, but Ghost of Tsushima, like Chad and Nick absolutely gush about this game. Every screenshot and like gameplay clip that I see is absolutely stunning. Like this game is definitely on my list. If it ever gets ported to PC, I will be playing this game. I've watched a few people's streams and on that AAA. What AAA games in your mind stand out?
Dead Space remake.
Yes.
And that was like one of the few that I played like relatively close to launch. And then I'd say Sekiro. I mean that's not really new, but that one really stands out. And I've only been playing it on the Steam Deck, and it's phenomenal. I'd probably also say all the Mario games.
I mean, that's the thing. Nintendo, when they release a Nintendo IP, and I'm excluding Pokemon from this because that's a Game Freak thing, Pokemon
Right.
company thing. A pure Nintendo IP, flawless.
Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom.
Yep.
Yeah, those are basically the big hitters that I got.
Yeah. So Joe says this proves to me that Mike has not been listening to anything for the last 5 minutes because he was uploading that.
It's true.
You caught me. You caught me red-handed. It was worth it though. Super Hunter Gaming says, "Hey, I know it isn't related, but have you heard anything from Alex Kister? Hasn't been a new upload in a while. You don't have to reply to this or anyone. I'm just a bit confused." You know what? I saw you comment on the Alex Kister interview video we have, that episode here on YouTube. And I don't know, honestly. When I saw your comment, I did go and check out his Twitter and didn't really see anything to raise any red flags, but I don't know. Is this some sort of Mandela catalog, like ARG, like analog horror thing playing out live during our podcast?
Oh man, what is he missing?
Are you his
alternate?
Are you an Alex alternate? But in all seriousness, I hope everything's okay with Alex. He was super cool. I really enjoyed talking to him. Maybe I'll try to tweet him.
You should
answer. That sounded very foreboding. Jordan says, heavy multiplayer games generally have more issues. Lots of times it will stem from networking problems. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I don't think Cyberpunk was a multiplayer game, maybe?
I don't think it was.
But yeah, it's very, very valid point. Jordan, what do you think? This is kind of off topic, but you talk about multiplayer games, and I think of Overwatch because you love Overwatch. Did you guys hear that all Blizzard games are going to be available through Steam, and you won't have to use the god-awful Battle.net launcher?
It is pretty terrible.
I am actually like legitimately excited about this because not that I play Overwatch or anything, but
they've got other great games.
I have been known to dabble in Heroes of the Storm quite a bit, and if I can play that without opening Battle.net, that would be awesome. So here's a few indie games that I put down. Of course, Valheim. I put Darkest Dungeon because it showed up on a list, but there's like this weird gray area between AAA and indie games that we're going to talk about, and I'm not sure if I think Darkest Dungeon might fall in there.
I'll
I'll
look it
have
up.
to look up what studio they have. League of Legends, believe it or not, indie game. They were right. Rito is a small indie studio. You know, they make no money. It's only like the most played game in the entire world, $1 billion company. But one that stuck out here, and this is what led me down the rabbit hole of like this gray area between AAA and indie games. One of my favorite games in recent times was Detroit Become Human, and that's a Quantic Dream game. They were described in my internet search as an indie studio, but I don't know. I think this is where we have to come up with a new category of what I've seen tossed around online, a AA game.
Yes.
And I don't know, have you played a Quantic Dream game before, or specifically Detroit Become Human?
No.
That game, I'm not joking, it's probably the best game I've played in the last year. And it had a ton of praise heaped on it. Graphically amazing. The narrative is second to none, and the mechanic of really being like actually being choice driven.
Yeah,
where,
that was really cool.
When you'd finish a chapter in the game, it would show you the flow chart of all the choices you made through that chapter.
Mhm.
But in that, it also shows all of the potential pathways you could have went through that chapter. And some of these flowcharts, man, I'm telling you, massive. And this was a long game. So, and the thing that I loved so much about it, this is quickly going to be coming to a Detroit Become Human review episode. But unlike a majority of the games that flaunt the your choices matter, Detroit actually every single choice was a fork in that flow chart that led to a different outcome. So they were like, I don't know the exact number, hundreds, if not thousands of different like possibilities during this game.
That's pretty cool.
Which one makes it a wild ride while you're playing it, but two, like adds an immense amount of replayability because at the time I was playing and streaming it, shout out, yeah, go head over to Showboys Gaming. We have a playlist up there, my stream of Detroit Become Human. Our friend BioSiv, he had just streamed like a couple months before I did a playthrough of Detroit, and he watched along with my stream, and almost every chapter he's like, oh wow, I played through that completely different, and our stories are like so different, and it was really, really cool. And the scale of the development of that game and the way it turned out, in my opinion, doesn't really line up with that of an indie game. But technically, Quantic Dream is an independent studio. So where does that land, right? While I was talking, I looked up Quantic Dream on Steam to get some of their games here. They actually only have 3 games: Beyond Two Souls, Heavy Rain, and Detroit Become Human. I thought they had more games than that, but apparently not.
Wait. Quantic Dream?
Yeah, well, this is just according to their tag on Steam. Like if you click,
I see 8 on their site.
Okay, what are some of the other ones?
Dustborn, Sea of Solitude, Lisfenga, Under the Waves, Heavy Rain, and then other ones you said, Star Wars Eclipse.
Oh yeah, that game that's going to come out in about 30 years.
Yeah.
The game that had no release date, but yet has somehow been delayed.
Dude, it looks sick though.
Dude, I know. We've been on the Eclipse hype train since that was teased. Jordan says, I'm cool with AA games. We can also have 9-volt games. This
Yeah,
can
yeah.
have all the jokes. You know what? Here's another random aside. Jordan like mastered the skill of the dad joke far before he became a dad. And like now that he is a dad, it's like just literally perfectly suited for
He just
for
rolled
fatherdom.
right into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just couldn't have been a smoother transition, I think. Yeah, so we have this. What do you think about this gray area between AAA and indie?
I literally just stumbled across it like 5 minutes before we went live. But yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit before. It is a gray area because you've got AAA games, which is massive amounts of people, right? And then you've got indie games, which is like 20 or less people. So somewhere in the middle, 20 plus, and then I don't know where the cutoff would be for AAA, but like, yeah, somewhere in the middle. Like, I wonder if they still fall into the same issues that AAA games do with their funded being pressured to push out games, which I would guess that they don't. Although like Darkest Dungeon, you were saying is basically a AA game, and they're coming out with a second one.
Oh yeah, it's been out for a little while.
Or yeah, but it's been out, but it's not like they were really pressured because it had been a while since the first. 2015.
Oh wow.
So it's been a minute. Yeah.
That has been a while. Holy cow.
Which is actually super cool. Like it kind of makes me feel like they aren't as pressured because it was a hit, reviewed really well, overwhelmingly positive, I believe, on Steam. And the fans wanted more, so they're like, all right, let's do it again. And I think that's the difference between one of the biggest differences between AAA games and indie games is that indie developers really listen to their fan base. They're really in tune with, okay, so this, and this needs changed, or they would like it to be changed because whatever reason. And the developers are like, okay, we can roll with that. Whereas AAA games are like, you get what you get, like a dad
one
with a
of us. Yeah. Man, Darkest Dungeon was definitely no, I'd still classify them as indie.
Oh wait, it
because
is.
they came out of nowhere, and Darkest Dungeon just became, no pun intended, a cult classic. Like, you need to play that game, Jeff.
I see. I keep getting attacked by a bug. Every time I look at it, I just like it hurts me. Like,
don't you besmirch the name of Darkest Dungeon.
I mean, I'll try it. I wish there was a try before you buy with Steam games. That would be rad.
That actually would be.
But
you mean like a demo?
Well, yeah, a demo. Yeah, I was looking at something else that was a AA game. It wasn't this. But yeah, this is definitely an indie game. My comments still stand though on the AA.
Well, hey, I have some news for you.
Okay.
According to tonight's sponsor, cdkeys.com, we're not actually sponsored by cdkeys.com, but if you want to sponsor us, cdkeys.com, you can just email us, showboyspodcast.
Please do.
The standard edition of Darkest Dungeon is $2.99. And the Ancestral Edition, which has all the DLC, is $7.89.
That's a steal.
That's a just buy it and then you can try it price right there. I've ever seen one.
That's a
So I'm
Yeah.
gonna copyright that. That just rolled right off.
Almost convinced me.
Yeah. I mean, $3.
Yeah, that's a bargain.
It really was a tremendous game. I think, again, this episode's turning into a Showboys gaming plug. But hey, it's our gaming channel, so deal with it.
Yeah.
I think that was the first game I streamed on our Twitch, and then it was crazy. I think the stream was like over 30 streams for me to beat that game. It was crazy.
Wow.
It was fun, and it's that a combination of that and then later playing Triangle Strategy has like sent me down this turn-based tactics like rabbit hole I've gone down. So thank you for that. Thank you. Yeah, so you brought up the point. So essentially the entire topic tonight came from your brain. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of gonna maybe pass the torch over to you.
Okay.
And what are you thinking? That came out wrong. That sounds like I'm like, what are you thinking?
What are you thinking?
No, but
Why would you do this?
what was going through your mind when you came up with these questions of like the first one, for example, AAA games being influenced and backed by investors with their own agendas?
Yeah.
Let's dig into that.
All right. So what really brought the topic on was my recent love for indie games and how they're just so innovative and like they really care about their community and their fan base, their player base. And I don't really get the impression or the feeling that AAA games really care that much. I mean, they're playing to a very specific group of people. But yeah, I feel like they are totally influenced and pushed to pump out content, games, so there's a bigger paycheck. I think Call of Duty is a big one. That's the first one that comes to mind. Are they really trying to make a great game, or are they just trying to collect money?
Right.
Now, sure, they've done some pretty cool things. Like their battle royale was fun. But I just don't get that feeling that they're really putting their customers first necessarily versus indie game developers. I feel like they care a significant amount more about who they're trying to get to, you know.
Do you have a specific example, maybe? Anything that comes to mind?
Stardew Valley.
Okay.
Very, very big community. I don't really know much about like the relationship between the developer and the community. But from what I've read, like just general research, they listen more to the response of the community and try to make adjustments or improvements on something specific or things like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So by agendas, you're talking making the case.
So like more revolved around like cultural things, cultural issues at the time. Like, I feel like they're really trying to push whatever movement is going on to really drive it home to people. Like, yeah, this is what's important. You need to pay attention to this, because we're telling you to pay attention to it.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that pops into my mind when that pops up is Last of Us 2, right?
Yeah.
Got a lot of flack for
Yeah.
that. I would push back though and say that you will probably see that as much, if not more so, in the indie community
Mm-hmm.
with the games being so targeted to certain demographics, because of the small scale and the fact that these indie developers don't have any restrictions or I don't want to say like restrictions like pushing your agenda needs to be restricted. And even agenda maybe not the best word, but like any devs have more freedom to tell the story that they want, right? Without having to stay within the lanes of like a major publisher who's really only focused on making money, which then, like you said, sometimes does turn out to catering to the cultural hot button issues, wokeness, political correctness, because it'll make you a quick buck. But I definitely have seen quite a few games that include all of the same stuff that people complain about in woke gaming culture, because that is also the culture in indie games for the most part. I think the thing to consider when it comes to that stuff, whether you agree with the topic at hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
The issue at hand, I should say, is game development is another form of art, right? It's the same as storytelling, music, right? It's narrative based, and storytellers and artists use their medium to get across the message that they feel they need to get across, right?
Yeah.
The issue that I have with it, regardless of whether I agree with whatever topic is being pushed or not, is it being presented in actually like a tactful, meaningful manner that makes sense within the story that's being told?
Right.
Or is it just being shoehorned in to check a box to make sure we're inclusive enough or diverse enough or etc., insert whatever topic or issue that you're trying to include, right?
Right.
A great example is actually not in gaming. It's the talks about Michael B. Jordan being Superman that happened like last year or the year before. A lot of people getting mad like, oh, Superman, he can't be black. It's Superman. And then the other side of the community being like, oh, why can't Superman be black? I don't care if a Kryptonian is black or white or Asian or Native American, but like instead of rewriting Kal-El to be African American, make a cool new story for a Superman. He's a Kryptonian. Like, Superman is Superman to us because we're not Kryptonians.
Right.
So like make a new character who's black and has superpowers like Superman, and tell a new story that explains that, right? I mean, you see Spider-Man, did this with Miles Morales, and it was really cool.
Yeah.
They didn't rewrite Peter Parker to be a different race. They created a new character with an awesome story.
Yes.
And it was awesome.
Yeah.
And you got to tell, send the message that you wanted to send in that story, which is great. It's perfect. Like, I don't, my beef with quote unquote wokeness in TV, movies, or gaming most of the time is not the issues at hand. It's the shoehorning of the issues into everything when most of the time it doesn't make sense.
It's the presentation.
Yeah, like just create a new story to tell this, to talk about the topic that you feel like needs talked about, instead of changing everything that those topics don't really make sense for.
Yeah. It just feels out of
Didn't
place.
come out right. Yeah, exactly. The out of placeness of it. So all that being said, indie devs do also, I hate using the word agendas, but like they have their own messages they're trying to get across too.
Yeah. I would say like an indie developer can take the time. Yes, everyone has their own passions, their own stances on things. That's fine. I don't care. But like, there's a tactful way to do it. You don't need to shove it down my throat. I don't know. I just feel like indie games take the time. They care about their characters, and maybe some AAA games do too. I'm leaning more towards indie games. Partly because of just like you said, just being force fed this stuff that I really don't care about. Like, let me play the game.
Yeah.
Like, you can tell a story, but don't shove it down my throat. Like, so an indie game that I'm thinking of is Celeste. It actually has a lot of different themes that they're trying to express in this game. It's wild. There's a lot of stuff that this main character is going through: anxiety, doubt, fear, failure. I mean, she's trying to climb this mountain, wrestling with this herself, really, basically. And those types of things are real, like everything that developers talk about within their story is real, and people deal with these things. But what are you trying to do? Like, what kind of message are you trying to portray? Like, do you actually care about the people that are struggling with things, or are you just trying to push a message?
Yeah. Well, here's what I'm thinking about while you're talking about this. This is what's going through my mind. I think the most impactful way to use narrative and characters to get a message across is in any art form. I guess, it doesn't even have to be a narrative thing or a character-driven thing, but in any piece of art, the best way to get your message across, at least in my opinion, is to present it in a way that the audience has to actually think about said issue. And I use the word very specifically, think, because it should not be, like you keep saying, like force-fed, like the message, the moral of your story should be something that your player, listener, audience of whatever fashion should have to process through and come to on their own,
On
right?
their own. Yep.
Due to their critical thinking through what you presented them.
Yeah.
But what we've seen over the last couple of years, mainly in TV and movies, is it's just there is no thinking, because it's the same. It's the thing that drives me nuts about storytelling is a lot of exposition dumps, right?
Mhm.
The viewer isn't allowed to infer things happening off screen, right? The most annoying thing in storytelling is when a character through dialogues like, well, I'm going to perfectly explain the entire scenario to you right now, right before or right after the scenario happened, instead of like letting the audience learn things through context clues and like thinking about things themselves. The entire scenario is laid out in exact detail right in front of you, and you're like, well, then why am I even watching this? You just told me everything. What's the point? So I apply that. The same thing that annoys me about that is what annoys me about these the social issues, the things that are popping up right in current day TV, gaming, movies, etc. The way it's being presented is not allowing or forcing the audience to critically think through these issues and like see what's going on or play through something and be like, oh wow, the way this person treated this person, actually that feels really crummy. Why? Oh, and then you're thinking through it. You're like, oh, it's because okay, so now I can understand that point of view because I just watched it play out and I had to like actually think about it. Or in what makes gaming so powerful is like you're controlling the characters, or your character is going through it, and by extension, that's you because you're making them move and you're inputting the actions, right? Whereas if it's just exposition dump of morality on you at all times where you don't actually have to play through or think through these issues yourself, it's like, what's the point? I mean, you know what I mean? You can't come to those conclusions on your own.
Well, that's why those decision-based games are so good. Like, because you are actually taking control of like these choices have consequences. Like, it's actually like playing out in a way that it really would.
Yeah.
And it's not like the storyline isn't like force fed to you. It's just like, I'm going to do this. And then, oh, well, this is happening now. And then this is happening. Like, I was going to say something else. Go ahead.
Oh, we have a few comments we should probably get through. Cricket says Stardew Valley has one developer. It's a one-man project. That's kind of impressive. Joe Cross says, I feel like indie games release in early access and change according to feedback. AAA games hold beta testing and change what they can if it's a deal breaker for people to buy the game. That's a good point. Good point. Joe Cross says, and we love Stardew Valley. Cricket says, who doesn't? Joe says, Biosiv doesn't. We tried co-op and he abandoned me. Joe also says, so not today. No, I don't think so. And then Cricket says, I'm going to bed. Have a good rest of the stream. Try to make it all the way. Hey, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you. Hope you
I know him.
Sleep. Yeah?
It might be someone you know.
Old Patty Boy.
Old Patty Boy.
Old Patty Cakes. Yeah. But I feel like we went down a whole like, well, not really, because it kind of dealt.
You want to go down a really short rabbit hole?
But well, just real quick, like one property that I thought really executed the critical thinking on social issues well is like X-Men. Like the whole being a mutant being fundamentally different than everyone who's quote unquote normal in society, right? That premise, then you think about that, you're like, oh yeah, it's pretty crummy the way they treat those people. And then you like apply that to like social issues. You're like, oh, okay, I kind of get it. Anyways, what were you gonna say?
Well, you were talking about good storytelling.
Yeah.
And like engaging your audience the right way.
Yeah.
And that was, and I just instantly thought of Mr. Robot. Like, because he had some serious issues, right? Like,
Yeah.
and he did some things.
Yeah.
But like throughout his story, you were so yeah, you were just there. You were just there with it. Felt like you were with him. Felt like, I mean, he was basically talking to us. So we were there with him. But that, like, in Sam Esmail had so much to talk about. Like he wanted to convey so much stuff, and he did it in a great way. Like, that is some great storytelling.
And he did a pretty good job. I was on record saying this multiple times. He clearly leans to one side on the social issues, but I think that show does a tremendous job of showing the ramifications of extremists on either side.
Yeah.
Which you don't normally see. But again, that's a great example, Jeff, of a property making you have to actually think through the issues that are presented.
Yeah.
Instead of telling you one way is right and good, and if you don't think this one way, then you're a scummy person. You know?
In the same breath, though, I feel like there are also some gamers that really don't care. They don't really care about a story. They just want to play through the game. They want to shoot somebody. They want to, like, whatever.
Yeah.
That, and whatever. And the story doesn't really matter. I mean, I've been there. Like, there's games that I've played. I don't really. I just think the game looked cool, and I want to try it. And that was actually Celeste.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
You just happen to pick one that actually has like a pretty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because
like angle.
I do recall the issues she was going through, and it was good. I mean, it was, but I didn't really. That's not the reason I got into the game. So those things eventually became relevant to me because I had spent enough time with the character that I actually kind of cared about this fake person.
Yeah.
But going into it, it looked freaking sweet, you know, and I just played through it because it looked sweet. And there are a lot of like platformer games, like Dead Cells, for example. There's like minimal story in that, because a majority of it is just playing through the game.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to think. You just play through it and you're done.
Yeah.
And those types of games are sweet. Because I was going to ask you earlier, do you think, what ratio do you think of all the gamers would you have one side caring about the story and where it's going and what things are trying to address? Or do you think most of the people just want to play a game? They're like Call of Duty, you know, you just jump in, shoot them up, done, whatever. It doesn't matter.
I am a terrible person to ask that question to. Since we are in the podcasting realm, the majority of people that I know care immensely about narrative and stuff. But that's because I am just in a Twitter feed and Discord feed of content creators who go through this stuff. So
yeah.
With that being said, I would venture to say a large portion of gaming, the gaming community as a whole, probably just want to play fun games.
Yeah.
And then a smaller, but not much smaller, I'd say maybe the split 55 to 45, 60 to 40, close to 50-50, somewhere in that ballpark. I think the other portion of the gaming community cares deeply about playing through a well-told narrative,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a very small portion cares about the issues and topics presented, like that being their main focus.
So
do you agree with that, or what? How do you feel the split is?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. And I can't base it off myself.
Yeah.
And
I'll
I
say
haven't.
this: I've never gone into a game and been like, you know what? I really just want to play a game that deals with crippling depression.
Right.
No, I've always been like, I think for me, man, I don't even know now that you asked that question, because like you just got done saying, certain games serve certain purposes for me. Like
Right.
sometimes I don't want to think about anything. I just want to jump on and mindlessly play through some kind of gameplay loop. So
Yeah.
I'll find a game that serves that purpose. And then other times I'll be like, you know what? I really just want to be in a good story right now. And I'll find a game that serves that purpose. But I've never gone out and been like, you know what? I want to play a game that addresses this topic. You know?
Right.
Like that's just like a bonus if it's told well through the narrative or gameplay. Anyways, what were you gonna say?
I don't know, but
I'm sorry.
no, you're good. You're good. I feel like you don't. I feel like it's different with games, because back in the day when games first started happening, first are being made, they were just games that you played. There wasn't any story. I mean, maybe a little bit of a story. I mean, a lot of them were really crappy graphics. I mean, like Mario, you were just going to save a princess in the castle, and you had to not die to get there and beat Bowser at the end. Which has evolved into, there is some story going on now in Mario. But like back in the day, like, I mean, maybe some story, but it wasn't story driven, I don't think.
Yeah. There's definitely been a big shift in games being more narrative driven.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say completely shifted, but like gameplay is still a huge factor, but I think gameplay loops are not the driving factor of majority of games. The narrative, presentation and just overall narrative experience is kind of like the main draw of a lot of, at least, AAA games, it seems like. I think this is another developing thing that we didn't really write down to talk about, but I think that brings up an interesting thing I'm thinking through live right now. I think maybe another definitive factor between AAA and indie games, a lot of indie games do take those chances to be innovative with their gameplay loops, and maybe are more focused on being gameplay driven with the narrative and message kind of more supportive of the gameplay loop.
Taking the back seat.
Yeah, but they're still like important, but not the most important thing. Whereas I think the shift in AAA is definitely more towards the narrative aspect of gaming and less towards the gameplay loop itself. Do you see that trend, or is this something that I'm just kind of making up?
I see that with not AAA, indie games. Like I definitely see they've got the narrative, but it's not as prevalent. It's not as well. Now I got to think of something. So Dead Cells, there's little tiny bit of story. Like you can tell something's going on, and little bit by little bit gets revealed. Stardew Valley, I mean, there's stuff that you can do that generates story-like things, like, but it's not like you're not following this clear path. You make up your own path. You do what you want. It's not in stone. Battle Bit, there's no story in that. You're just shooting other pixelated people. What else is there? However, see, I don't know, because like there's a game, RimWorld, where you crash land on this planet, and like that's a game that's like you drive the story. The story doesn't drive you. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, that's actually those kind of games that I like, where I generate the story myself through my actions, rather than having to follow this path and do it this way, or you can't continue. You know what I mean?
So you're more of a sandbox as opposed to an on the rails kind of guy.
However, there are some games that I've played that's okay. Like I'll do that. Like Dead Space is very linear. Like you have to do the story. You can't deviate from it. I love that. One of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I lean more towards the sandbox. Like, I like to have control there. And I pay dearly for it in most situations, but that's fun, you know? You go back to the drawing board and start over and try something else out. And that's part of the process, you know?
Yeah. So the next two questions we have here kind of go hand in hand, really. We'll go with, like, do you think game studios have to have like a huge monetary backing to be significant?
No. I mean, I feel like, see, it gets tricky because what is your intent? I mean, what are you trying to do? And do you need money to do that? Like, I don't think you absolutely, I mean, you obviously need money to make the project do something or go somewhere. You got to pay your employees, or they're going to be angry and not want to do anything for you. I would say it's something that you need, but I think the question is, how much do you need to be significant? Not do you need money to be significant? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like indie games, loads of cash money, right? Are they significant? Some.
Yeah.
Last of Us, great game. Horizon, great game. A lot of AAA games are pretty great. But did they need that fat stack of cash to get there? It's hard to say, because would they have gotten the recognition without it?
Yeah, I don't know, because money affords you a lot of resources, right?
Absolutely.
I definitely think money played a big role in the success of a lot of AAA games. Being able to have so many people focused on graphic fidelity, right? To be able to pay, good story writers to write your narrative, to be able to hire devs that are excellent with X game engine, right? Being able to pay really good voice actors. I think something that is often forgotten about in gaming, or maybe not forgotten about, but maybe not appreciated as much as it should be.
Yeah.
Something that made The Last of Us a terrific game. Incredible voice acting.
Yeah. Well, Sorry, like I feel like it's all about being immersed in the story and in the game. That's important, and I feel like if that's the end goal, right? You want to totally engage your audience.
Mhm.
You're going to do everything you can so that they are. You create this space for them that they want to keep coming back.
Yeah.
To keep experiencing it.
Yeah, and I think actually I think all three of these questions kind of tie into each other because if you have somebody giving you a lot of money, are they going to want to have a say in what you're producing?
Yes.
So does having large financial backing then influence what you're producing? Probably, maybe not exclusive. Those things aren't always included with one another, but I don't think they're always exclusive of one another either. And I guess it depends on what we want to define as significant. Like, are we talking game changing in the industry, changing core mechanics of gaming or the way stories are told, or just a game that's so good that it sticks with its player base for years and years and years, and like 12 years later people are like, oh man, like I can remember the exact moment of like my headspace when I beat The Last of Us. Like that has stuck with me. And that game is how old? Like pretty old.
Right.
But me playing through that final scene of that game is like cemented in my brain because it had a very big impact on me, the way that story was told and the way, again, that game in and of itself completely, I wouldn't want to say change my mind, but like solidified the art of gaming as a very, very valuable and I would even say needed medium for storytelling. Because like the things that you were forced to do as Joel, again, perfect example of like blurring the line of social and moral issues. I wouldn't, maybe not social, but definitely morality was blurred there in that game.
Right.
And it's still a hot topic of conversation of like what Joel did. Was that the right thing to do?
Yeah.
Like,
we were just talking about that.
Yeah. Is he actually a giant scumbag for doing what he did? Or were his reasons like, I can't think of the word, like, were they acceptable because of the relationship that he had with Ellie? Right? Were they
justified?
Justified. That's the word. Thank you. Yeah, were they justified because of his relationship with Ellie, right?
Yes.
That is a significant game.
Yeah. Yeah, it
right?
is. Significant enough to make a show.
Yeah. I would say that there are a lot of indie games that I think can check all of the examples that I just laid out of significance, right?
Yeah. I can't think of any. I'm kidding. I would say
wow.
The first game that comes to mind for me is Minecraft. That's not super story. It's not story driven at all.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
indie there. It was an indie game.
Yeah. And like, it stood the test of time, like 20 years, maybe. It's been around for a long time and it's still being played. And that was started by one dude.
Right. And it popularized like a whole new genre of gaming.
Yeah.
Survival crafting. Like
studios are still making games. about this.
Yeah.
Like this similar play style. I mean, that's basically Valheim. There's a few other games that are coming out soon that are just like it. And it's it's a significant dent in gaming history for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I always describe describe Valheim as Viking Minecraft.
That's right.
That's
right.
how you know you're a significant game. But I look at an indie game, a small little indie game back in 2009 called League of Legends that has fundamentally impacted the gaming industry as a whole.
Yeah.
And esports industry as a whole.
Yes.
I
With
would
little
call that
story.
significant.
Yeah. Very significant.
Indie studio, free to play game. It essentially, I don't want to say definitively, but in my mind, popularized and perfected the free to play model. Riot Games is now like $1 billion company. Off the back of a what is it, 14-year-old indie game they made that has 2 game modes.
Yeah.
And not only that, like I mean, you can have the argument between League and Dota, but League of Legends is the most played and most watched game, I think, in gaming right now. They handcrafted, handcrafted, wrong word. They've perfected the MOBA genre, much like World of Warcraft kind of perfected and streamlined the MMO genre, right?
Yeah.
They are the largest esport, right? Like League of Legends esports, huge.
Yeah.
I obviously did no research on this right now. I have absolutely no idea what kind of financial backing Riot Games had when League of Legends was made, but I'm going to guess it was not significant. It was not huge.
Probably not.
And they've changed the face of gaming.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't have to have a massive financial backing to be a significant game and leave your mark on the industry, right?
Yeah. It helps, but I don't think
it does help.
I don't
Yeah, I would agree with that. It definitely doesn't hurt. Well, I mean, that's all that maybe is wrong.
I think
it probably could hurt, but
another box to be ticked for significance would be replayability. Because no one cares if the game can't be played more than once. You know, like if it's a good game, I'm probably going to come back to it, even years later. I would say a good example of this for me is StarCraft, which is Warcraft. Blizzard World of Warcraft. They came out about the same time.
Yeah.
I could play these games, StarCraft 1 and 2, right now and have just as much fun, maybe more fun than when I was a kid when it came out. So I think replayability is very high on that list of significance because, right? I mean,
yeah. I'm sorry.
you
know how when you have Steam open and like if friends start playing a game, and at least on my computer, a little box pops up in the corner. It says so and so is playing whatever.
Did it say I was playing something?
No, but apparently I have a friend named the Bayou Crackhead, and he is playing Hunt Showdown right now. If anyone cares, I'm sorry, it just popped up, and I was like, "What a name!
Hilarious!
What a name!" But yeah, no, replayability is a big factor too, and I don't know if it's like the end all be all because certain games serve different purposes, right? So like a narrative heavy game, like The Last of Us or Uncharted,
Detroit.
Well, Detroit's a little different because of the options. Like, it does have that replay value
Yeah,
because you could play it again and not have the same outcome, right? And
that's
get a
true.
little different story than you got the first time. But the Last of Us story is always going to be the Last of Us story, no matter how many times you play through it. It's a fun game, and when I had a PlayStation 3, I played through it a bunch and played the multiplayer and stuff like that. But yeah, some games just don't lend themselves to good replayability that were fantastic games. But
Yeah,
it definitely does help if you're like, man, I could pick up XYZ game at any point in time and play it again because it was a lot of fun.
Dead Space. Dead
Yeah, I don't
Space.
know if I could suffer through that, and not as in suffer through it because it's a bad game, but suffer through the mental anguish and
The horror.
tension. Yeah.
It's pretty rough, bro.
Man, though I do wish I could have experienced it like for the first time with the remake. That would have been awesome.
It's so good. It's so good.
But does money devalue the message of the game and the heart of its creators? That was another question you had on here.
I don't know. It
Look at this.
depends.
Joe says, I bought a PS3 exclusively for The Last of Us, and it was the only PS3 game I'd ever played.
Wow.
That was probably a good one.
Probably
Please tell me you liked
one.
it.
Probably the best one I ever played on the PS3.
Yeah, safe to say, I think. But yeah, what were we saying there?
Can you read that again?
Does money devalue the message of the game and the heart of its creators?
I think if they're getting pushed by funding or like backers, I think that could devalue the message because they could be forced. Like you have to do it this way to get it across this way to reach these people, whoever. And the main intent of the creator is all well and good, right? But if they're being rushed, to get a certain part of the story or whatever, I think it could skew the end result. Think, I mean, the original intent is there, and I feel like the story is still getting across, but it's just not being told. And I'm totally making this up. Like I don't know what goes through these creators' minds. I don't know, like, if they've got the balls to say, I'm not going to do it this way. I'm going to stand up and say, I am going to do my way. Like, yes, I'll take your money.
Right.
So I feel like in certain situations it probably could.
Yeah.
Because it would dilute the overall vision of the creator.
I think what it could come down to, as we're, an hour and a half into this discussion, this just popped into my head. I think maybe we just need to blame this all on the corporate overlords of the game industry, right?
Yes.
Because I don't know if it's necessarily backing that brings this stuff on, but if you're being backed by a massive company like EA that is literally just made up of suits, right? Again, no experience in the industry, never worked with EA, never made a game, never did anything like this. The perception is EA is a bunch of suits trying to make money, right? So you're working with EA. They just want a game out to sell. They probably don't care about you wanting to perfect it before the release. They probably don't care about delaying it for a month so you can tweak something to hit that one narrative beat, right? Maybe they won't let you take a leap in a gameplay mechanic or a narrative beat because, hey, that might be a little too risky if you don't want to like scare off any potential customers, right? So maybe it's not being financially backed or invested in. It's who is investing in the game, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think because I don't want to throw like AAA studios under the bus and be like, none of these people care about games. All they want to do is make a buck,
Right.
Because anyone who's doing any sort of creative thing for a living has to have some sort of passion driving it, right? So these people in the games industry, probably large majority of them, love games, hence why they decided to try to making games their living. But when you're under the heel of the corporate overlords of the gaming industry, maybe you don't get to do the things you necessarily wanted to do, or maybe you have to rush and get a game out on a deadline because they won't extend you. And I don't know. I don't know exactly where I was going with that, but that just kind of like popped in my head as we were talking through this.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's relevant. Who is backing or who is pulling the strings? I think that matters. But like you said, like every person in this industry, in these studios, care about games to some degree. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tricky because, for one, like you said, we don't know them. Like we're not in those circles. Maybe one day, but not today. So we can't really speak to it. We just, from what we experience playing through these games, like, okay, so we've got this game that wasn't really ready to be released,
right?
But it released anyway. Why? But then also, on the same coin, you've got Rockstar Games delaying the
Don't
crap.
you do it? Don't you even go there?
Okay, I won't.
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
But like they're a great studio. They create great games. Like little to no bugs, I would argue. But they've delayed a certain game that I will not speak the name of because I don't want to trigger anyone.
Yeah. All right, we're just waiting for the Steam Deck port of GTA 5. That's what they're working on right now.
It's like a hot button topic for us here at Showboys.
They're actually working on the Google Pixel 6 port of GTA 5 as we speak.
You mean 7?
Or no, wait, they're a generation behind.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Because I'm like, yes. Yeah, I mean, I think certain AAA devs get it right. I think some of these studios get it right, and they do it very well. But somehow they're able to take their time, and they've got great storytelling. It's great looking, and replay value is high. I think both sides of this, they get it right.
Yeah.
Not all on either side, but they do. I think maybe one side it's a little rare to see. But I don't know. I feel like indie games, not much stands in the way of their passion and their dream to get something made. And they're going to take the time. I guess the moral of the story is they're able to take their time, and they will take their time because they believe in the project. And if it's not ready, it's not ready.
Yeah. I will say all devs are in an impossible situation because us gamers are like,
oh, we're never happy.
Just take your time. Don't put a game out until it's ready. Like, I want a polished, like, working, bug-free game, guys. Like, just take your time. And then when they're like, all right, thank you so much because we were really up on it. This game's not coming out for another 6 months. And then everyone, like, collectively, simultaneously flips over their desk. They're like, what are you talking about? Why is this game delayed? Then you're like, well, literally, what do I do?
A great example is Hollow Knight.
Yeah.
Great game. Huge success. They revealed Silksong. Everyone's going wild over this game.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten delayed several times. Like, it was supposed to I think they were supposed to talk about it one of the summer gaming things, but they never did, or it just got delayed. And everyone's freaking out. So, like, we want a polished game, but then we're pissed because, it's delayed. Because I think that's very telling, though. Because if your gamer audience cares that much about your game,
yeah, that's kind of a good sign. As frustrating as it probably is.
That's a great sign. That means you're doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, they're angry that it's not ready, but they want it so bad.
Yeah.
They don't know what's good for them. You know?
Right. Yeah, it's I definitely feel bad for devs in those scenarios for sure. Joe said this a while back. We should probably throw this up here. I can't wait to see this DLC for Death Stranding. When Norman Reedus' character only drank Monster Energy drinks. Or I'm just kidding, I never played that game. So did that actually happen? Because if it did, that's hilarious. Please tell me that actually happened. But with Joe, I'm just gonna let you in on a little secret. I can never tell when Joe's joking or being serious. I can never tell. Yeah, so I guess we'll end the episode here with this one last question here. I posted on the YouTube community page a little poll ski. By the way, again, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can take part in our wonderful polls on the community tab. I'd love to hear from you guys. I posted a little poll with 3 options. Are indie games in a better state than AAA games? AAA games are bust, or why choose? Both are in a good state. 67% of the votes were for indie games being in a better state than AAA. 33% of the votes were for why choose. Both are in a good place. 0% of the vote was for AAA games. I mean, 33% were, I guess technically voted for AAA games because they said why choose. Both are in a good place, but no one exclusively was like, yes, AAA over everything else. Joe says, oh yeah, every scene when you rested, he drank a Monster Energy drink. Well, again, I don't know if you're telling the truth, so I'm gonna have to verify this myself.
He is. I looked it up.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. We need more sponsorships like that.
Right?
Like little product placement. I'm okay with that.
I've got a Yeti here. See?
It's a nice episode brought to you by Yeti. Tumblers. I had to think about what those were called. Yeah, so here's the final question. Which do you think is in a better state, AAA games or indie games? Or, like the poll said, does it really matter because both are kind of in a good place? gaming as as a whole is kind of in a pretty good spot. How do you feel?
That's very tough. I think, yeah, that is tough. I think they're in an okay place. But I would lean more towards indie games. I think they're in a better spot.
Yeah. I think you definitely need both, right? There's
Yeah.
a place and a need for both in a gamer's life.
Absolutely.
Because they both usually serve different purposes, and they both do things excellently in different scenarios. But in regards to at this current moment, which one do I prefer? Which one do I think is less of a gamble? I guess maybe that's how I'm interpreting in a better state. Like if I buy an indie game or buy a AAA game, which one is less of a gamble of actually being like a functioning game that is actually good? And I'd probably lean more towards indie games.
Yeah.
The rise of indie gaming over the last 5 to 10 years has just been
Crazy.
incredible. Like it's been so incredible that we're creating a new category for games, AA, which is essentially indie games on steroids. I mean,
Yeah.
if you want to, that's how I would describe a AA game.
So, Subnautica.
Subnautica. Okay, what about it?
That's a AA game. I can't tell you anything more than that, but that's just what I saw.
I would definitely put Detroit Become Human in that category, AA game. I think there's a lot that could slot into that category for sure. Did I prepare anything for that category before coming on here? No, I didn't, because I'm a bad podcaster. But yeah, indie games are getting so good that it's blurring the line between indie and AAA, which is astounding. I think, you're probably taking less of a gamble if you're buying an indie game in terms of it, coming out of the box, or digital box, I should say, working properly with high quality and giving you a great experience, be it through gameplay or narrative. And AAA games in the last couple of years have just kind of been a coin flip. Like,
Yeah.
am I going to turn this on and be able to actually like function within this world? Another big thing is this game actually going to be what was promised? Like, another thing that Cyberpunk, besides being an incredibly buggy mess, like, it also just didn't deliver on the promises that the devs were putting out leading up to the game's release, which that's not a AAA exclusive thing that happens across gaming as a whole. But it seems to be more prevalent these days in AAA games, or maybe it's just being broadcasted more as an issue because it's AAA games. I don't know. That's another thing to kind of look into. But yeah, I think there's definitely a place for both. But I think indie games probably in a better state in this current day. But yeah, I don't know. You got anything else, bro?
Well, I was gonna say I wish I would have seen this earlier, but there's like a chart of all three, comparing them all, like in different categories, and I sent you the link to it.
Where?
In our private chat.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Comparison. Oh yeah, this is wow, this would have been really great to have.
It would have been. That was a great find, just a little too late.
Man.
It's basically what we talked about. I was just looking for stuff on AA games.
Yeah.
So like they talk about PUBG.
Yeah. Plague Tale Innocence.
Life is Strange.
2. Yeah.
So a little bit bigger than it's a step up from indie.
Yeah.
But not quite as large as AAA.
Yeah.
Good production
that's-
values.
We'll have to include the link to this article in the episode description.
For sure.
Yeah, good find. Thank you guys for hanging out. Sorry that we debated you with our guest. Yeah, exactly, Joe. Wow, we didn't even have to have an episode. Just post that. That's so true.
Perfect.
And our complete bafflement by this article should afford us a little bit of grace in terms of plagiarizing this article for our episode tonight, because we definitely did not do that. But yeah, sorry about the guest. We had a ridiculous storm roll through the area here in Northeast Ohio. I was just on Twitter, and I saw a video of like I-90 just completely like a lake, which is ridiculous. So
Wow.
there are cars driving through it, and it was like, halfway up the car door. So that area up there kind of got hit pretty hard. So
dang,
yeah, pretty ridiculous story.
Pretty
Surprised
rowdy.
the power didn't go out. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. Subscribe and come back next week where we'll have an episode talking about things and stuff.
Peace out.
I really should have had the video prepared. Bye.
You should have.